Mágah os an cuire chun leabhart lo or leabhart live inniu. And don't worry, that'll be the last of the Irish, so we'll be all able to understand it. You know what, it's a hell of a lot easier walking into a fight like that than it is walking up onto this stage to do this talk. Especially when I got a phone call from Father John yesterday. And I was driving back from Dingle and I said, yeah, all set for tomorrow, Father. I said, I just want to touch on a couple of themes with you and make sure you're happy with what I'm about to say. He goes, yeah, do you know what, Bernard? Just we want you to, inspire and motivate people. I said, shit. So that speech had to get thrown out the window. So I was writing a speech today. Thanks for that, Father. And I was thinking around, I suppose, my own journey. My own journey in faith, my own journey in sport, my own journey in life, and kind of what inspired and motivated me. And I had a chat with Father across the road, and the biggest inspiration of my life and the biggest motivation of my life has been my family, and in particular my father. My father was a religious man. My father was also a 1976 Olympic boxing representative for Ireland. And somebody wants me to start throwing punches very soon, do they? Ringing bells already. My father boxed in 1976 Olympics in Montreal, and he was also my coach, which from time to time can be difficult when he's your father and also your coach, and it's difficult to see the separation of lines between coach and father. But my dad really is the greatest man I've ever met, and the greatest man I know. I grew up in Neilstown in Clondalkin, which would have been a challenging area when I was growing up. And my dad realised the importance of structure, discipline and sport for young people in their lives. And every kid who lived in Neilstown Avenue, because they were exposed to my dad and they were in my dad's direct sight, every boy literally got thrown into the back of it. And it was a Volkswagen Beetle. Highly illegal at the time. But it was about 10 kids in the back of the car being driven to core. And every one of those young men have grown up to have a successful life. Now, they've not been world champions, but that's not what it was. It was about giving them respect for themselves, respect for others, discipline, structure, being able to set goals. And my dad instilled all of this in every single kid that he was. And he still does it today. He trains my local club. And it'd be the biggest in your life, as you'll find out through the tell. I started boxing at 5. My dad was my coach. First fight when I was 6 years of age. I'm not the biggest of people now, so you can only imagine what I looked like when I was 6 years of age with a pair of boxing gloves on. By the time I was 11 and you're allowed to properly compete, there was something in me, there was something different about me. And my dad recognised this very early, and he encouraged me to do everything, to be involved in all sports. He encouraged me around school. And that was probably the biggest push on me, was school more than sport, because he wanted me to have something to fall back on. And for him, as a boxer, when he boxed, he had the opportunity to go professional, go to America, but he wanted to be with his family, he wanted to raise a family, and he did that at home. He did 3 jobs to keep us taken care of, I suppose, and supported. And then still had the time to train me in the house. We would train in the kitchen. We used to do some sparring. I used to go in and tell my mum, you might want to go in and pick your husband up off the floor. I was vicious. It didn't matter who I was fighting. So Dad took a few beatings. But he inspired my whole career. He motivated me, and he never forced me to do anything. And faith, I think, was a big part of what he was trying to do for me. He was trying to create a better life for me, give me a better opportunity. He had a belief that if we wanted to do something and we were disciplined, we believed enough, and we did the work, anything was possible. I missed out on the Olympic Games. My sole purpose when I was growing up was I wanted to be better than my dad. That's what I wanted to be. And probably because he was my coach more so. And I somewhat, when you're 15, 16, 17, and I've told my dad this, like I resented my dad somewhat at that age, mainly because I felt I was missing out on things. You feel like you're missing out on leaving certain night or going out with your mates or, seeing girls or whatever it is that young kids do nowadays. And I look back now and I thank my dad for everything that I have. And he is solely responsible for that. And so I look at the young people here now and like I'm retired 17 years, so these kids have no clue who I am. But, when your parents are telling you to do something and, they're not telling you for their sake, they're telling you because they believe it's what's best for you. And that's what my dad was doing. I missed out on going to the Olympic Games. But my dad was like, well, what else are you going to do? So I went to college for a year. I went to Trinity College, got a scholarship in Trinity, because I'd kind of become disillusioned with my sport. But then professional offers started to come in, and my dad said, well, if this is really what you want to do, go and do it. We'll support you. My dad was actually going to move to America with me. And my then girlfriend took his spot, so, he didn't get a chance to come and live with me in LA. I think he kind of resents me a little bit for that one. But he was always supportive of me. So we go to America. I'm 21 years of age. We got a contract over there, and we had 14 fights in America. Actually, I wasn't going to tell the story about my sister, so I said it to Father across the road. The only reason I went to America, I failed a brain scan in Ireland. So I have a cyst on the brain. But thankfully, it's nothing too serious, and I've been able to survive my life with it. But we couldn't prove that it wasn't from boxing. And so there was this Euro-Tolman policy in Ireland and the UK. I wouldn't have been allowed to box here if I'd stayed in Ireland. So the only reason I went to America was because of that. And so my dad always told me that things happen for a reason. And then it's up to you then to, either follow through on what it is you're trying to achieve or you give up. He said, that's your decision. I wanted to follow through, so I went over to America. I had 14 fights in the States. And then I wanted to come home. I wanted to come back to Ireland. I want to give boxing an opportunity back here. And I said I'd give it a fight, maybe 2 fights. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to America. So after the first fight, it was great. We couldn't print enough tickets, and people supported me superbly. And then I become European champion. And this is amazing, especially for the younger people here, for everybody, I suppose. I never really bought into the press, so I didn't read about myself. I didn't listen about myself if I was on the radio. I didn't listen to watch TV. So if people were saying positive things or negative things, much like they do on social media now, I never read them or watched them. So I never really had those external influences coming into me. But as European champion, I get to fight a guy called Kiko Martinez. Some people in the room may remember him, little Spanish guy that came in. He landed on a Friday. This thinks and sliced bread on a Friday. By Saturday night, when he knocks me out in 86 seconds, I'm finished and I'm washed up and I've let the country down. That's what was in the papers. That's what was in the press. And it would have been so easy for me to just walk away and leave. And said to my dad, and he says, we just didn't execute our plan. What are you going to do about it? It's up to you. You don't have to keep fighting. But I wanted to keep fighting. I wanted to keep going. And I wanted to bring boy to Ireland. That's what I was doing. I was representing my country. It's what I felt I had to do. And I didn't feel I became a bad fighter overnight. And 2 years later, I had to fight for the championship of the world, as you don't any the horrific matter, thankfully. I wasn't born looking like this. It's been rearranged once or twice. So, but we get this chance to fight for a championship of the world. We get to of our own, my own family. It turns out to be the world fight of the year. And there was a moment in that fight where I actually spoke to myself. I had an out-of-body experience. I was dropped twice in the 5th round. The first time I was okay. The second time I remember, you see my mother celebrating there. In my mother's hands there's rosary beads and a St. Anthony card. So it was the only time she prayed, by the way. The only time she prayed was when I was fighting. And she wasn't looking at me. I remember I was looking up and I said, geez, what's wrong with me, mother? And she wasn't looking at me. I thought, oh, you're on the floor. It was the first time I realised I was actually on the ground. I didn't even know I was in a boxing ring. And I had a conversation with myself that lasted, in my head, about 25, 30 minutes. In reality, it was only 2 seconds. But I spoke around the sacrifices that my family had made, particularly my dad, my wife, having left her with the kids and gone away for training camps for 12 weeks, moving to America. I was on the fire brigade panel at the time. Are you going to be a fireman? Is that what you're going to be? You know, people are going to say, well done, but hard luck. Is that what you want to hear? Now remember, this all happens in 2 seconds. But I'm up out of my body looking at myself, having this conversation. Then in the back of my head, I just hear this voice shouting at me, get up. Get bloody up on your feet. Get up. And I got up. How we survived the round, I'm not sure. And the very first punch that I throw, I miss my opponent and I hit the ref. True story. And the bell goes, and I pat the ref on the back, on the behind as I walk past him, and I say, whoa, got you there. And from that moment, I was back. I was clear in my head, and when I sat in the corner, my corner couldn't believe how clear I was. We go out and we're back and forth, and then the 11th round, you know, as you see there, our life changes, you know, and everything that we've done since the age of 5 becomes real and becomes validated and becomes true. I had dreamt about it all my life, and you mentioned Barry McGuigan earlier on. I have a picture at home of me with Barry when I'm 6 or 7, and I'm sitting on Barry's knee and I'm telling Barry, I'm going to be like you someday, you know, and here we are. I was obviously a slow learner. It took me a while. But that changed everything for me in my life. But after that fight, Cordoba ended up in the hospital because he had to get taken out in a stretcher. And I collapsed in the changing room. And they tried to rush me out the hospital, but I asked my own doctor to come in, and I was given an injection, and I was put on a drip for a while. But I went to see Cordoba after it. Because we had shared something so intimate. We had shared something animalistic, really, like it was brutal. And I wanted to honour him, and I wanted to say thank you to him, and I wanted I just wanted to make sure he was okay. He didn't understand the word of English. I didn't understand the word of Portuguese, I think he spoke. He was from Panama. And but we had a conversation, and it was just fabulous. But that changed me. That changed my body. That changed my mind, I think. It took so much from me. And shortly after that, I retired. Because I started to kind of feel like a job, started to feel like a chore, and something that I had to do. And this is where my dad then really becomes strong in my life. Do you know what? You know when you've been on a diet for 10 weeks or whatever it is? I've been on a diet since the age of 11 years of age. Like, I never had Easter eggs. You know, so all of a sudden I was able to eat what I want, drink what I want, stay out as late as I want. You know, and that's great for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then it becomes very boring and mundane. And coming from a life of structure, discipline, and sport, it became seriously challenging for me mentally and, I suppose, spiritually. And I came very close to going back fighting. I just felt completely lost. My value, my self-worth was gone, because I'd left behind what I believed was the only thing I could do, which was fight people, you know, and I was good at it. And I remember watching a fight. It was my weight division. It was a European title fight, and I thought, gee, I'd beat both these guys, no problem. So I called my wife in, and I says, look, I'm feeling lost. I feel worthless. I feel like I've left everything behind me, the things that I can do. And I said, I'm thinking about going back boxing. What do you think? I never went back boxing, so that can tell you what my wife thought of the situation. But she said one thing to me, and she understood this. She says, go talk to your dad. I spoke to my dad, and I said, look, I'm lost. Like I said, I don't know what I'm doing with myself. And he just said a simple thing to me. He says, well, what have you tried? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, what have you actually tried? I said, well, I haven't tried anything. He says, when you try something, he says, you'll find out one of two things. He says, one, you don't like it and you don't want to do it, which is great, at least you know. Or he says, the other thing you'll find out is, you like it and you want to do it. He says, which is also great. He says, there's no obstacles to trying things. He says, to it. He says, go out and try stuff. And literally that conversation changed my life again. And since then, I suppose as Father said, I've worked with multiple teams. I did performance psychology in Limerick. I did a master's in business in Dublin. I've worked with multiple teams. I've travelled the world with Olympic sport. I've written a book. I've done TV shows, and most importantly in my life, I've learned the Irish language. And that's my passion. That's my goal. I love working with the language. I love speaking the language. But again, that came from a simple conversation with the man who left school when he was 11 years of age, but was selfless and wanted to see the best for me. And that's what I love doing now. I love working with people. I love working with teams. Because I've been honoured and lucky to be as successful as I have been in my sport, and other things that I've done. And I love imparting that and giving opportunities to others also. So the message I suppose I would leave you with is, don't be afraid to try things. Always be open to new ideas. Always be open to new opportunities. Because you'll find out one of two things. One, you don't like it, or you don't want to do it. Or two, you know what, I do like it, I'm good at it, and I want to do it. There's two great benefits in that. Good morning.